Want awesome tabletop games delivered right to your door? Sign up now for Gamebox Monthly. Learn more at GameboxMonthly.com. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Elaborate. We are officially a 5-star podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much to those of you who have left those reviews. Please keep them coming. It is working. I'm very excited today to be sitting down with a guy who I know through a former friend of the guest, Tony Wayne, but I don't know him incredibly well. Looking forward to fixing that. He is a writer, a stand-up comedian, a producer, a man that wears many hats. It's Michael Bachmann. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Choke right up on that microphone. Pull that right up to your mouth. There you go.
Many hats.
You wear many hats.
Yeah, I got a lot of hats.
You got a lot of hats. Hashtag I got hats. Do you prefer to be called Michael or Mike?
Mike is fine. Michael is like what my mother says, and it feels a little formal. It feels like people want you to call him Jeffrey.
Ew, gross.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to be called. Who wants to be called Jeffrey?
Dudes who spell it with a G.
Like, yes. G-E-O. Oh, yeah. And then halfway through, they started telling people it was actually Joffrey. And they're like, listen.
You know, actually, I think in my SAG name, when I sag, is
when I sag. I don't think that's how you use that.
I think that's how it's supposed to be used. Is Michael A. Bachman, because I was a big fan of Michael J. Fox back in the day. And
you need to have the middle initial?
So in acting and on camera, it's Michael A. Bachman. And in producing, it's Mike Bachman.
Oh, okay. So you try to give yourself two different identities?
I'm multifaceted.
I wondered that myself because people who listening to the show who know me probably know Lloyd.
Both of them?
Yeah, both of them. You when this comes out and your mom. Most people probably know that Lloyd is actually my middle name. I don't use my last name professionally for a variety of reasons, although I've been told multiple times I should.
Do you use it in an amateur way?
Yes, I use it in strictly amateur. But I've struggled with maybe like my directing credits should be different from and I'm like, you know what? Who cares? My name is my name. Let me just stick with what I started with and at least ride it out now. I'm
worried about this because now what we're doing is I'm losing trust in you. You know what I mean? Because now it's like when people are C. Thomas Howell, you're like, why aren't you just... What happened with that C situation?
Yeah.
What are you hiding?
H. John Benjamin.
Yeah. There's
Robert Ben Garant, who sometimes is just Ben Garant.
That's an obscure reference.
Well, you don't. Come on now. It's the State.
No,
Reno 911.
Never heard of it.
You never heard of Night at the Museum?
No, never heard of it. Are these books?
I'm sorry. Are these Bible chapters?
Unless they're Dungeons and Dragons characters, I really don't know.
Oh, really? Is that your shtick? You a Dungeons and Dragons guy?
Not at all. There is a guy named Mike.
Wow, you really avoided that very abruptly.
I want to be very careful, very clear to both people listening that I'm not. Well, because there's a guy named Michael Bachman on Twitter, and he's the Mike Bachman, and I'm the Bachman on Twitter.
Wow.
And
first off, you're both pretentious.
We are.
One is just slightly more, one was slightly quicker at getting the pretentiousness.
Well, it was based on what was available at Hotmail at the time. And so I beat him out. And so I'm the Bachman and he's the Mike Bachman. And I think he's really into that stuff.
Oh, really?
And sometimes people accidentally contact me saying, hey, that thing about the 4th level dungeon master. And I'm like, bro, no.
Listen, all right, well, two things. One, I think you're being very condescending because I enjoy Dungeons and Dragons.
I figured you would.
And I'm going to segue this into telling people to keep an eye out because official announcement, we're going to be having a Dungeons and Dragon Wagon podcast on the podcast network pretty soon, which I'm excited about. And now that I've said it in public, we have to do it. So that's how that works.
I'm going to alert the Mike Bachman.
Let him know.
Who is my other Twitter guy, and he's going to be all over that. And he's actually got a pretty big following, I think.
Yeah, we'll let him know that we mentioned him on the show.
He's gonna love it.
Yeah. So to go back, you specified that you use something different for acting. Right. What were you first? Were you a stand-up first? Because I think that's how I kind of.
Well, you know what? I to go way back, I started as an actor. I am the 10th of 12 children from Ohio.
That can't be real.
Yeah. No, I'm number 10 of 12. Michelle, John, Mark, Gina, Wisty, Eddie, Kelly, PJ, Julie, Michael, Angela, Christopher.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wait, are you Mormon?
No, I'm Catholic. We don't believe in premarital sex and we don't believe in birth control, which is a terrible mix. And so in Akron, Ohio, I was born in Cincinnati, actually, and raised in Akron.
Are all 12 children the same parents?
Yeah. and then we adopted a foster kid, so we're probably up to like 15. But
could we get them a goddamn medal? Your parents, like that's incredible.
Yeah, they are pretty impressive. They're both alive. They're both 80s. They're still married. They're But for me in Akron, Ohio, growing up, it wasn't weird to have that many people in your family. Like, my sister Kelly married a guy who's got 12 brothers and sisters.
So it's just a thing. Women just sprout out dozens of children at a time.
Yeah, well, the Catholic Church was like, we got a problem. We got to make sure there's enough of us going forward. So
is that what it was? It was about keeping the numbers?
I think so. I think it was. Well, I think it was about working the fields. And then
literally.
Yeah, and then it was about plowing the fields. No, it's inappropriate. So inappropriate.
It's not that kind of show.
Talking about my mom. I think that when you come from such a big family, you got to stand out. And so I became a performer pretty early on.
Were you the only one of those 12 that was like kind of a ham or kind of a performer?
No, everyone is a ham, but they all use it in different ways.
Gotcha.
My dad was a bookie and a gambler. So we would be really rich then really poor. And my mom didn't work. She was a social worker in Chicago. And then when she married my dad, her biggest charity case ever. God bless them. But they're awesome. But so dad loved comedy. Dad would go to comedy clubs and, he'd submit jokes to Carlin and.
Oh shit. Really?
Yeah.
He would do like would he fax them?
I think it's pre-fax. I remember seeing a packet on his desk once of like jokes for George Carlin.
That's incredible.
And so he appreciated comedy and,
I would love to read those jokes.
I would love to now too. I'd love to see what they were. He calls me I'll get a phone call, all the time. Hey, Michael, I got one for you. Okay. What do you call all the time he's calling me with jokes.
And you said he's from Ohio, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, pardon my naivety, is Ohio a very liberal kind of land? Like, no, because I feel like George Carlin, although I guess he was sort of the everyman, the blue collar guy, but he also had very progressive viewpoints where I wonder if like, if that's a testament to the type of person your dad was, if he was really big into Carlin.
It's funny you say that. My dad, he was in Fort Lauderdale at the time and ran to Carlin in a club, I think, and that's how he said the jokes. Because my father, when I was younger, my father's very Republican.
Okay.
And my mother's very much Chicago Democrat.
Oh, really?
And so
interesting blend.
They're absolute opposites of each other. And Ohio is much more Republican and they elected Trump this year. And every year, I'm always like, I got to go back there and vote because I got to fix that.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. And and my brothers and sisters, and the good thing for me is it makes me a well-rounded person because I feel like I have certain brothers and sisters who are very conservative and certain brothers and sisters who are very liberal.
Interesting.
And so I always think to myself, we're cut from the same cloth. We have the same upbringing, just about, we have the same parents. We grew up in the same economic status. Why could you be so stupid as to want to vote for Trump?
Right, of course.
Or whatever it is. None of them this year, actually. My dad for a little while was a Trump supporter. My brother was for a little while, but I think they eventually said.
They woke up?
Yeah, is he making fun of disabled people?
Right. So it was pretty early. So it was day 2 that they stopped.
Yeah, it was pretty early because my little sister has Down syndrome and my mom is like on the Bureau for Children with Medical Handicaps. So like my family's big on that kind of advocacy for people with disabilities.
Shit.
So when he does that, it's like he broke the rule, Yeah. So
what's the age difference between the oldest and the youngest?
Well, the oldest, Michelle, is in New York City or Westchester, and she is, God, I don't know. I guess Michelle was born in 61. I hope Michelle doesn't listen to this. That jerk.
Well, I will send it to her personally.
I think she was born in 61. Maybe, is that right? So I think my mom was pregnant for I don't know. I'd say they're about a 15-year difference, maybe.
All right, hang on a second. I'm just doing the math here.
She's pregnant constantly.
9 months
it takes to make a
pregnancy times 12.
Yeah.
She's pregnant for 8 years, 8 or 9 years solid of her life.
Yeah.
She was spent pregnant.
Yeah. She loves kids though. And we all love kids. She
has to.
And all of us get along. And as I was saying, everyone's funny and everyone's, I enjoy everybody and we all enjoy each other's company. And they're, doctors and the girls do better than the boys. My sisters are all, a lot of them have doctor in front of their name.
Oh, really?
And the guys are salesmen. I guess the boys have done pretty well. Until you get to me, who's the artist. And
so you and I are probably the same person in our family then.
It's I'm still middle child.
I'm not they're not necessarily as many of us by any means, but it's still like lawyer, doctor, comic, podcast host. It's like, something really making them proud. Making them proud.
That's our family is.
Do you see all of these 12, these 11 or 12 other people regularly?
I don't. And that's one of the reasons I'm thinking. We lived in California now for about 10 years. And
Okay.
I lived in New York City for about 10 years before that. And before that, I was doing, Shakespeare and children's theater and all the garbage you do to kind of pay your dues or whatever.
When you were, how old were you doing Shakespeare and shit?
I left college to do the Wisconsin Shakespeare Festival.
Oh, really?
That's where I met Tony D, actually.
That's where you went? You mean Tony W?
Tony W, because everyone uses fake last names around here.
It's his middle name, much like Lloyd is my middle name. So give him some credit.
To me,
Tony Wayne, former guest of the show last week.
Tony Wayne, yeah. So I met Tony. We were both playing small parts in Romeo and Juliet in a rap company in Platteville, Wisconsin.
Wow. Do you remember what parts? Because now
I played Gregory.
Okay.
And then he played.
Is he one of the fighters, Gregory? Is that one of the guys who's like?
Do you bite your thumb at me? Was me and Tony's scene in the opening of Romeo and Juliet. It's like, do you bite your thumb at me?
Right.
Like, oh yeah, and
right.
So that was our scene, and we were terrible, and we were just rotten.
I would love to ask now, Tony, how were you guys? He'd be like, I thought we were really good.
Oh,
and you're
buddy,
like,
we were dedicated, buddy. We were really studying Shakespeare. We were totally, buddy. It was the good stuff.
You do a pretty great Tony.
Yeah, Tony and I spent a lot of time together, buddy. So we do things like play baseball on stage where you make the physicalization of hitting the ball and then someone on the other side of the stage makes the physicalization of catching it. Or we play that game where you make a little circle with your fingers and you hold it below your waist.
You got to try to see if they look at you.
And then you have to punch them on stage and wipe it off. And if you didn't wipe it off, you go back and have to punch them.
Right.
And that's what we were doing.
Right.
Like
Shakespeare was dicking around.
Yeah, Shakespeare was completely secondary to it. And then and he lived right across the street from the theater. One morning I passed out on the sidewalk in front of his house. The police came. We're like, "What are you doing there?" I'm like, "I'm just taking a nap."
This was in
Platteville, Wisconsin.
Platteville, Wisconsin. And he lived out in Platteville. So I always thought he was like Eau Claire.
No, we both got jobs there. It was our first. It was a Shakespeare job. It was like
gotcha. Right,
Shakespeare company, and we both kind of ended up there.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Ohio University.
Oh,
so So to get back on the path. So I did. I was an actor when I was little, and then went to visit my brother, who's an engineer at Ohio University, and auditioned for their acting program. And they only accepted like 24 out of,
really
hundreds and hundreds of people in my mind.
And so they only selected 24 out of 1,000, out of 1 million people. It keeps going bigger and bigger every time.
And so I got in, and I studied acting. I studied movement and theater and plays, and and really took it really seriously, and left school actually early to go do the Wisconsin Shakespeare Festival. And then from there started touring children's theater. I'm a bear, don't do drugs.
Oh my God, really? You were the bear, don't do drugs?
No, actually I was, I used to do a whole bit about it. I was conflict resolution plays.
Oh.
So I would go to schools, and me and my buddy, a buddy of mine named JW, used to go into schools and do these things we get a couple of kids to be in the show with us.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course. And like have the confrontation and you fix them.
Yeah.
Act it out.
Yeah. And this one school, and they would play a small role, and we do these conflict resolution plays. And one school we went to, JW, we were late, of course, we were running late, and we get to the school and we have the kids read through the script with us before we started. Well, this particular day we were running late, and this kid is like, JW comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, there's this one kid over here. We don't have time to read through, but he says he has problem with his ahs."
With his ahs?
With his ahs. And JW's like, "Say amen." He's like, "Amen." It's like, "Okay, great." And then, and so JW comes backstage and he goes, "This weird kid over here." He goes, "We didn't have time to read through, but he said he has trouble with his ahs." And I go, "Oh, that's weird." And so I go, "How can you, if he said he has no problem with it." Then he starts reading, and the kids read before we come out, and it was called Krista's Enemy. And he comes out, and the kid starts reading. He's like, "Uh-oh, here comes Quista. She's in trouble again." And I was like, and we look at each other like, "Oh, his R's. He has trouble with his R's." It was so
That's
terrible.
amazing.
And so we started laughing.
Of course, yeah.
And
like professionals do.
Yeah. And we just come out just in tears laughing. And the more you can't laugh, the more you want to laugh.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that, my whole career is comedy. My whole career is as an actor, as a writer, as a producer. And even when I did tour in children's theater for a while.
Sure.
Then I moved to New York and was part of a theater company, was doing stand-up in New York, and got my first equity off-Broadway show in New York. I was an actor in something.
Where were you doing stand-up in New York? What clubs were your clubs?
Comedy Cellar was my favorite club. I used to go there.
Everybody's, yeah.
Yeah, I used to go there all the time. This guy, Greg Gilderman.
What year around this is it?
This is the 50s and 60s. No, I would guess I would guess 90.
Late 90s?
Mid to late 90s. I think I did my first set at the Comedy Cellar.
Wow. Geez, talk about like a way to immediately quit comedy after day one.
Yeah. And then I did
pretty brave of you to.
I love that. Well, you don't realize before, until you're a comic, you don't realize how prestigious that room is.
Right, yeah.
Because if you don't know comedy, you're like, what's that shitty room where people have to walk through it to go to the bathroom in the restaurant? Like,
right, yeah.
And then you see who's on the wall, and then you sit back in that back booth with the other comics about to come on,
right.
And you don't realize at the time that Louis C.K. is there with you, like you don't know who he is yet. You know,
of course,
there were great comics, and there's still great comics that pop into that club all the time.
Absolutely.
And then I would go to Caroline's, never one of the big paid guys at Caroline's, but played Caroline's a lot and Stand Up New York and Gotham before Gotham moved. And I was never, I was an okay comic, but I was never doing more than 10 minutes and I was never going to go on the road with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was doing stand up and then I was doing, TV stuff. I was in a show called Hope and Faith, which is with Kelly Ripa and Regis, an episode with Kelly Ripa and Regis. Was
really?
on it.
Just random.
Well, and then I did a short movie a few months earlier with Kathy Lee Gifford. And it was like this weird sort of talk show portion of my life where I was with talk show personalities as actors. And then I was doing bad TV and doing stand up and doing some writing here and there.
Sure.
And my wife said, hey, I want to get my master's in education.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll do temp jobs for a while you get your master's. Something more. So she went to get her master's and I started working in an office at a hedge fund in an investment research firm. Because I like the guys. They were all doctors. It was all medical stuff.
Cool dudes.
Yeah, they were cool dudes and they were nice and they were fun. And so
it wasn't a soul sucking for you because the people around you were enjoyable?
No, because they loved what they did. They were really, really doing it. And I temped a lot of different places. I even wrote a script called Super Temp about a guy who couldn't commit to anything and everything in his life was temporary. And all I did was temp jobs.
That's you?
Yeah, that was me for a while.
Right on.
I would get to the temp job. And they'd be like, "We'd love to hire you." After no.
Yeah, this is a hard August out. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Even though I had nothing else lined up, I'm like, no, I'm a comic and I'm a writer and I'm a poet. And
let me tell you though, I have that same symptom. If I'm really good at a thing that seems like it's a thing I could continue to do, I tend to self-sabotage because like I don't want to get stuck in this job as a freaking salesman or I stopped doing design work because like I started getting too much work. I know that's like a silly.
I know.
Talk about white people problems, like, but because it's a fear. Like when you're a creative type and you're the type of person who like wants to be putting yourself out there and wants to be, and you enjoy a variety of different kind of creative endeavors. It's a risk to get settled into something that's going to pay you well and that likes you. Like the second somebody really wants you around, that's when I'm like, I need to. That's
a much deeper kind of concern, I think.
Yeah.
Like there's this whole sort of self-worth thing that you're examining right now. There's like, if you love me, I must, I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy. Well, yeah, maybe that's the reason why I couldn't keep a girlfriend.
If you really want to unpack this thing, we have some work to do today.
Well, all right, listen, there's a reason I do this podcast on couches.
Yeah, and we can't hug because the way the mics are set up. I think there's a reason for that safety net you're putting up. You're building this wall between us.
It was a no hug zone.
No, hug free. So the funny you say that because speaking of self-sabotage, I ended up being a partner at that hedge fund.
Oh, geez. And so you did stay for a while.
I stayed. I mean, everyone becomes a partner at a hedge fund because once you are there for a while, you become invested in the fund, your salary goes. And so,
right.
But literally I was a partner at the fund and there's only so many of us. And the guy who ran the fund and the institutional research business said, you know what, everybody's got a fund now. I'm going to just go work for somebody else. And I got a call from my friend in LA. And he said, hey, one of the actors in these sketches, our sketch comedy group has to go to a movie. This guy, Adam Hirschman, he did.
Sounds familiar. The name.
Yeah, he did like a college movie. I think it's called Accepted, maybe.
Oh, yeah. I know Accepted. That was Justin Long. Yeah. That wasn't a terrible movie.
It wasn't a terrible movie.
Yeah. Wasn't Louis Black the principal in that movie?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Louis Black was my very first ever paid stand-up gig. Was talk about like No Pressure. Opening for fucking Louis Black on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a rough night. It did not go well.
It didn't go well?
No, not at all.
What was he talking about?
You were just talking about this guy called you from New York.
Yeah, so my buddy JW said, can you come out to LA? Because Adam
to fill that spot?
Yeah, Adam was he's the nicest guy in the world. Really funny, weird guy. Adam went to do Accepted, and can you come and play his roles? And I said, well, yeah, great. What are the sketches? Send me the sketches. And he goes, well, CA is interested in signing our group.
Oh, the whole group.
The whole group. And I said, oh, that's awesome. And so I said, great. He sends me the sketches and they're sketches that he and I wrote in college.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, you're still
doing
using
my
these things.
material,
You're still
yeah.
using this garbage. And like there are Reagan jokes in there. And like some setups were removed with the punchline stayed. You could see that they were trying to make them quicker, but they took out the setups. Like there's this great sketch about.
They're trying to modernize it for whatever that era was.
Yeah. And like we had this sketch called the Bible sketch where it was like a writer's room for the Bible.
I like it.
Yeah. And so it was a fun group of guys, you know, Dan Lindsay went on to win an Oscar. He was in our sketch comedy group. Brian Thomas Smith was in that group. BTS. He's on Big Bang Theory now. JW, who called me out here, now owns a string of escape rooms.
Oh shit! Really? Yeah. Which escape room? Let's plug it.
In Cincinnati. It's the Cincinnati Escape Room. It's in Cincinnati, Ohio.
You hear it here, folks. Check out the Cincinnati Escape Room in Cincinnati, Ohio.
I wish I had the site.
Tell him Elaborate sent you.
You should go. He's got a few of them. He's doing well. And there were a bunch of other funny, Greg was a bunch of side game. There were a bunch of funny guys in that, a bunch of girls, Siobhan and Heather. And it was a really great group of people. So I came out to LA, we were dissolving the fund, and I came out to LA to act in those sketches, and then called my wife and said, hey, let's move out here. And, because, CA was excited about us. I signed with a commercial agent and did some commercial work. And I was like, this is the greatest place in the world.
So you had a very different experience than most people in LA. You kind of hit the ground running, and you came out here with a job. You got to LA with a job, which is
the sketch comedy wasn't paying.
But okay. So you came out here with a gig.
A gig, yeah. I could always tell people that I came out here whether they didn't know it wasn't paying.
Sure, yeah. So you said you were already with your wife then. When did you meet your wife?
I met my wife in New York. I was temping.
Is she a New Yorker?
Here's the thing about my wife, Rachel. I thought she was the ultimate New Yorker. She was I was temping at this AMA, which is like American Management Association. It's like a place where like people learn how to be managers and learn about, business grammar.
Right.
And I was like the front desk guy because I'm jovial, chubby comic guy. And I was like,
you even get cast in those roles in real life.
In real life, I was that guy, and I sat next to this girl from the Bronx, Jean Marie, and Jean Marie be like, "Oh, welcome to AMA, and this is Mike, and he's an actor, and he's doing comedy. You should go see a show." And so Rachel would wear all black and had short blonde hair and smoked like a chimney. Was always walking by my desk to go have a smoke, and she managed the bookstore and was very intellectual. And
right, she was that girl.
Oh my God, I loved her. She was so severe and like, and really sweet when you talk to her, but also like
very honest and blunt, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it just had kind of that, New York, like I didn't realize at the time, but it was because she was shy.
Oh.
I thought she was like, savvy New York girl. So I would try to talk to her more and more. I think I tried to start smoking, I was trying to find ways to talk to her.
I love that you tried to start smoking just so that you could go out and sit with her. Is that what the plan is? Like, I'll take my break when you take your break, that kind of thing?
Oh, we're going to smoke? I'd love to have a smoke. I'm dying for a smoke.
Yeah.
I love these, the menthol ones are the best. So I was pining for her. And one New Year's Eve, I was in Times Square for New Year's Eve. And I was, and there was no one to kiss. And I think I was probably drunk, and I run into her on New Year's Eve.
Oh shit. And just like out and about and like,
like on 48th Street, like, there's a crowd. Then we kind of turned off and I was kind of walking.
Oh, wait, you were in the city for the ball drop, for the big crowd.
Yeah. I was in New York Times Square. Like, what are the chances of thinking about a girl with that 10 million people?
Being like, geez, I wish
she was the girl I was kissing tonight. Turning a corner and there she is.
No wonder you love the movie Serendipity.
Oh my God. Right. And so she's tending to her drunken cousin. And like, I was like, oh my God, this is, serendipitous. And her cousin goes, and she goes, oh my gosh, hey. And her drunk cousin goes, oh, are you? And said someone else's name from work.
Oh, geez.
That she must have liked.
Her work crush.
And I was like, no.
Which is clearly not you.
I'm not him. And then I proceeded to get drunk for a year and a half.
Oh, I love that much.
And then the next year, somehow I ran.
Oh, so that night nothing happened.
Nothing happened. We weren't even dating or speaking to each other. I was just pining for her. And then a year later, somehow I talked her into meeting us at a bar on New Year's Eve and said, "This is when I'm going to kiss her. We're going to start this relationship on New Year's Eve." And so we're in this dumpy dive bar by Port Authority, and it was one of those bars where it was too cool to do a countdown.
Oh yeah. Like we don't care that's midnight.
Whatever. Whatever. What are you talking about?
It's just another day.
Yeah, and they're playing, all this. I think Patrick Shanley was there, and there's like a weird group of like playwrights and like this super hip group of people, and so they're playing music, and like I'm just looking at my watch, going, okay, I don't know her. I knew her well enough that she would come meet me at a bar at midnight. So, And she must have not thought I was a complete dope. And she had a boyfriend or something, I thought, back home in Minnesota.
Right.
Oh, I didn't tell you this. So it turns out she's from northern Minnesota.
Oh, yeah. She's not in New York at all. She's from like the most not New York place you could think of, Minnesota.
Yeah, all right.
Minnesota.
Exactly. She's from northern Minnesota. He'll betcha. So so that New Year's happened, and then they didn't count down, and then she gets in the cab, and I never kissed her. And I was like, oh my God.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. And so then after that.
And then you had to wait a whole nother year for another New Year's.
I know, because apparently the rule is only first kiss has to happen on New Year's.
I like how you just, for the year in between, you're like, nah, whatever.
No, it needs to be perfect.
It's got to be on New Year's.
So anyway, so we're at some work function. Finally, after that second New Year, I started to wear her down. And we're at some.
It's a terrible way to put it.
Yeah, and we're at some work function. And I was like, God, she's such a New Yorker. I just adore her. Like I'm an Ohio guy, and she's like just this cool smoking.
She's everything you wish you were.
Yeah. And so we have a few drinks. And then all of a sudden, the more she drinks, the more she's like, yeah, so I was going to get it. And all of a sudden I go, oh my God, you have a weird accent.
It starts coming out.
Yeah, it starts coming out, this deep northern Minnesota accent. She is from a town called Eveleth, Minnesota, which is the home of the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah.
Which is 3.5 hours north of Duluth, Minnesota.
Jeez.
So it's like nowhere. It's like the coldest place in the face of the earth in this tiny town. And so it turns out that this girl who I adored as a New Yorker was just this northern Minnesota, iron worker girl, And then I fell in love with her even more.
Sure,
like,
yeah.
This is so perfect. And our first date was on Valentine's Day on the Upper East Side.
Oh, so it only took you 2 months, a month and a change.
I guess it did. I guess from that second New Year's. And I'd known her for years before. So I guess it was about probably 3 or 4 years before I even got a date with her.
Yeah.
And we've been married now for 15 years.
Wow, congrats. So how quickly after that did you guys end up getting married? Because you must have still been in New York.
New York, yeah. We dated for a few years, and then we lived in Hell's Kitchen together for a while, and we got married. There's a magnet on our fridge that's like a save the date magnet that we have to check every few months to see if our anniversary is coming up, because it has a date in a year. I think we were married in.
You don't even know.
Well, we were married 15 years. We were married in 2000.
Yeah, if you're married 15 years, you should definitely know because you've done it 15 times.
It's 2017 right now.
Yes, so that's the year it is.
So in 2000, well, I guess I don't know if you want these podcasts to be evergreen. I don't know if you want to be like try to sell these again, and later on, like, it's 2041, and we're listening to. I know what you.
No, I appreciate the thought.
But yeah, so we got married in 2002 in April in Ohio, and
in Ohio. Oh, so you went back to Ohio to do it.
We did, because New York is expensive as hell.
Yeah, and you get to fly people out there and stuff.
Yeah, and I have as I mentioned, I have all these cousins. And
shit! You must have had a giant wedding party.
Brothers, what we used for our wedding party was all the kids of all my brothers and sisters.
Oh yeah, so you must be You must be an uncle like me. You must be an uncle times 500.
Well, I think I have 30.
No,
30 something, and then I'm a great uncle.
30 something nephews and nieces.
Yes. My kids are like.
I thought that I was a lot at 12. You were 30 something.
No.
Well, yeah, I guess you have 12. I mean, here's the thing: is that I'm at 12 with only 3 brothers and sisters.
Wow, your family's pretty fertile.
But also, I should. That's an unfair thing because I count my cousins' kids because they're like my brothers, my cousins.
Oh, I always forget to count my wife's side. So it's probably.
Oh, jeez, Louise, they're multiplying.
Yeah, there's a lot of. There's my kids. When my kids were born, like my daughter was like the 27th grandchild, and then my son was like the, 32nd grandchild.
That's incredible. How did
daughters like
so? Is there anybody in your Is there one of your siblings who doesn't have children? There were more than one?
No. Well, yeah, the ones below me. There's Christopher Critter, who Christopher Robin.
How many different nicknames does he have? What's his real name?
Critter Bob.
Critter, yeah, you like Christopher Critter, Christopher Robin,
Christopher Robin, Critter Bob, Crit. He is younger than me, and he's living in Fort Lauderdale. I think he's working in a sub shop. Critter, he was going to come out to visit me here in California several years ago, but his car broke down in Denver, so he lived there. So he lived there for 2 years.
So his car broke down and he just stayed.
And then he moved to Florida.
God, I love this guy. Yeah. He's like, well, I guess I live here now. But,
He's like, oh, bro, I guess I'm not coming out.
He's like, well, let's see. I could drop $200 on this alternator, or I could get that apartment that I can see from where the car broke down.
That's exactly what he did. He became like a ski instructor for children. He didn't know how to ski. It was like the weirdest thing.
This guy's a character.
Yeah, he's the greatest because all my brothers and sisters, he's kind of like whenever you travel with your kids, you bring Christopher along with you, and he helps.
Right.
with the kids.
That's like
that.
my role. That's
You're
And the reason I asked about if you had one that didn't have any kids, because my grandfather is like that. My grandfather has many siblings, and my grandfather himself had a ton of kids. You have 30 plus 40 with the married, like keeping up with everybody, knowing names is insane. So my grandfather's sister, who was my great aunt May, we used to call her the center of the universe because she was the one that didn't have kids, but knew everything. Like she didn't have any of her own kids, and so therefore everybody's kids were her kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we had a family reunion when I was 18 in 2001, I think, or 2000 when I was 17 or 18. And at this family reunion, I met cousins that lived the next town over that were my age, that were into all the same shit that I was, that I had never met before.
Oh, wow.
At like 18. And everybody knew Aunt May. Like, so everybody at that giant family reunion of people meeting who didn't know each other, who lived, 5 minutes away.
It all connected back to May.
Aunt May was the center of it all. And I wonder if that's going to be your brother.
Well, I don't know. Critter. Yeah, I guess, his twin sister, Angela, has Down syndrome and lives with my parents.
Wait, so one of your siblings is a twin set?
Yeah, Christopher and Angela.
Oh,
the last two are twins.
The last two are twins. Wow, as if your mom and dad didn't have enough.
Yeah.
They got the last one like, well, guess what? Two for this time.
And one was down. My mom had the last one when she was like 48. So
Gotcha.
she has Down syndrome. I'm like, Mommy, stop having kids. So
do they think, not to make it too personal, but do they think that that's the reason? Just because of her age? Or is that just,
is
that what it is? I'm naive to it. I don't know how that works.
That's generally, I think that's a factor.
Really?
Oftentimes with Down syndrome is older eggs,
Wow, I did not know that.
And she's an absolute blessing in our, in our family and she's a character. She is very funny and works very hard to be mainstream and use the language. She adopts language of other people because she can't really read and write, but she's very socially aware, so she'll pick up phrases other people will say.
I only really know two people with Down syndrome, and both of them are like that. Both of them, they will take a phrase from a TV show or something, and they will use it with precision comedic timing.
Yeah.
Whenever it's appropriate, and sometimes it's actually most of the time they're self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And it's like it's always endearing. I mean,
she has this phrase that she always says, "Don't play with the ocean," and
don't play with the ocean.
Well, it's because my father, like me, has always put comedy over parenting.
I love him. I already love him.
Yeah. And so sometimes my mom would have to say, John, don't play with emotions. John, don't play with emotions. And Angela misunderstood that.
Don't play with the ocean.
One year they're driving to Florida to visit and Dad said, uh-oh, Florida's closed. And Angela is like, don't play with the ocean, John. Don't play with the ocean. And so she honestly thought it was like a thing that you would say.
So, when Dad was being kind of silly or Dad was being sort of like,
I'll tell
goofy.
You, my dad is, and the reason I say everything's comedy because that comes a lot from my dad. And I don't give him enough credit that, my comedy, my love of comedy comes from him.
Was he always sort of a ball buster and always like, with that many kids, you have to have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And you can't not have a sense of humor with 49 children.
100%. And my mom has a great sense of humor and she loves to laugh and she enjoys her kids, enjoys her family, and loves to just sit around and drink wine and tell funny stories.
Are they both, you said they're both in their 80s.
Are
they both still
mid,
really,
late 80s.
Are they both still with it? Are they both still really present? Yeah.
Yeah. My mom.
Do they like modern comedy? Do they watch movies? Do they watch...
they kind of latched onto some favorites, like Seems Like Old Times, the Chevy Chase is one of their, like they kind of have an era of movies they love, but they thought something about Mary was hysterical. They still see comedies. They still like.
I like that for you. Something About Mary was the modern title that you named. Like
movie
was 20 years ago.
Well, Chevy Chase, the other one was like 40 years ago.
I know.
So
that's
like Goldie Hawn.
I saw your brain thinking like, modern. Yeah, something.
Well, modern that's on TBS right now.
Yeah,
I guess is
right, of course,
which has lost all rights to.
Sure. I couldn't believe. Quick sidebar, just because you mentioned that. When I was visiting my nieces recently, and they were watching Nick at Night. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I used to watch Nick at Night when I was a kid. That's why, like, one of my biggest obsessions is Dick Van Dyke. I credit the Dick Van Dyke Show for my interest in the entertainment industry. Like, that shaped me so much. That, as well as the Mary Tyler Moore Show, as well as the Bob Hope Show.
Those were before my time.
As well, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is that Nick at Night, when I was a kid, was stuff from the 50s and 60s, and I think even 70s, right? Because there was like Green Acres, that sort of stuff. What's on Nick at Night nowadays is what used to be TGIF. It's Full House, Step by Step, The Family Matters, and I'm like, what is happening in the world?
Oh, don't get me started. Right now, my kids just did a Fuller House marathon.
Oh, that
Fuller
show
House.
was unwatchable. The first episode was so ham-fisted.
Fuller House?
Yeah.
It's terrible. When I work on writing sitcom, one of the things I struggle with sometimes is format. And that show, the format is so obvious. Here's your A storyline.
Right.
Here's your B storyline. Here's your C storyline. Here's your complication of your A storyline. Here's your complication. Here's how your B storyline. And
it's literally post-it notes. It's just the whole show is just post-it notes in a column.
And my kids, when we watched it the other day, we did that game where we say, okay, A storyline is DJ has to go do this. B storyline.
So you're teaching him about writing.
Yeah. So yeah, all three of them. They're like, okay. So then I would call it, and then we call it during the show. This is part of the B storyline, B storyline, B storyline, back to A storyline, back to A storyline.
Wow.
B storyline combines with A storyline.
These kids are going to be freaking writing geniuses.
They are. They're going to have an appreciation for it. So hopefully they'll do better than I did.
You mentioned, just speaking a little bit about your kids, you mentioned that your son is like really into Transformers.
Oh my gosh.
At the new movies come out, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go watch this thing. But you say that he's like a super nerd about it.
Yeah, he's not a fair weather fan. He's been into Transformers for a long time.
And he's 11?
He's 11 now.
So Transformers has been off the air for as long as he's been alive, unless they brought it back.
Well, no, there's something called Transformers Prime, which he doesn't really feel is true to the original because they play with some of
He's such a little hipster. I love it.
Hub. Yeah,
he's a Transformers hipster.
Yeah, Transformers Prime is not really. They don't really follow the rules, Dad.
Okay.
Not, Wheeljack is not the same Wheeljack.
So he watches the cartoons that were on when I was a kid.
Yeah, so he watches the 2D. I got him a set of DVDs of all the original ones.
Okay.
All the original 2D, animated ones. And then he really wanted to see the first Transformer movie.
Like, you mean the 86 animated one?
Which I couldn't find anywhere.
80, whenever that came out. I want to say 86, something like that.
Yeah.
The one where like he dies at the end. Spoilers. Doesn't somebody die in that movie? Doesn't someone
always die in those movies? Like,
I don't know.
So we got I ordered like from this Korean DVD store, like, and it came and it was in Korean when we got it. So we started watching it and I'm like, it's in Korean. He's like, that's okay.
I love this kid.
I'm like, Oscar, what do you mean? He's like, I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
And now he speaks Korean. No.
Yeah, now he's fluent Korean. And so we watch. He can only pick a fight with lasers in Korean. But we're watching this thing. And we're halfway through it. And I'm like, how are you even? And he's paying attention.
And he's into
like,
it.
Oh, he's like, that must be Bumblebee. So Hong Chang Yang must mean Bumblebee. Whatever. And so then eventually I figured out a way to get through the settings on the DVD player in Korean. To get to choose English.
So they have an English dubbing version on the DVD.
Yeah, and then it changed his world. Then it was like, oh my God, it's in English and it's the original. And so he watched that and he knows all the characters and who they are and what their backstory is and how there's a part of their body that makes them transform.
Oh, really? Like he knows the
he knows
workings of it?
He knows that body part is called because there's some group called Mech that stole, Transformer parts to make their own Transformer.
See, were you like that for anything as a kid?
What's funny is as I said, the family was so distracting. I don't think that there was that much, and we were poor. Well, we were really, really rich, and then really, really poor.
Depending on how good Dad was doing,
how the Cleveland Browns did that week.
Oh, jeez.
If the Dallas Cowboys make it to the Super Bowl, we can afford your sister's braces.
Wow, it was really. I know there's probably some semblance of humor here, but was it really
true.
that?
It's that bad. And he was a gambler because he wasn't a good bookie. So like, what we do is he would win money and then buy a business, and we'd all work in it. So he won money, bought a car wash, and I'm like in third grade scrubbing white walls before and after school. For like an extra.
Well, I mean,
$1.
you got 12 kids. You might as well.
Yeah, and then he
had
a Hallmark store that he came home one Easter morning and lost the Hallmark store in a card game.
Oh my God! So he was like legit gambling problem.
Yeah. And it was. You don't realize it feels like someone else's life when you look back on it. You don't realize how dramatic it was until you look back and say, I could never pull that off.
Right. Right.
But we were, and so we weren't miserable, and so then he'd win, he'd buy a big screen TV, and then he'd lose and he'd have to hide out. He'd have to leave for a few weeks to stay away from the guys who are looking for money for him. And
holy shit.
And then
this is something out of an actual movie about a dad who that's.
And he's not a bad guy. And my mom used to go to the Hallmark store and take how much money could she leave in the cash register for change the next day and how much she could use for groceries. And she used to tell us she would always buy flour instead of bread because she could do more with flour. And she's got like 10 or 11 kids at the time. With me, it was 10 and then 12.
What did you as kids know about his, were you guys aware of what he was doing? Or was it just like, we're having a bad week?
Yeah, I think we didn't know. I think my older brothers and sisters obviously knew. It's
Right.
like my dad says he raised 4 families of 3. You know,
Right. Oh, that's an interesting way to put
and
it.
we all got jobs. You know, we all worked for him until we could get our own job. And so you'd work for him like 40 hours a week, and then you go into him and say, "Hey, Dad, could I have $10 to go to the movies or whatever?"
Right.
He's like, "How many hours do you put in the Hallmark store this week, or how many white walls do you wash?" And
Right.
well, you know, and then he'd pull a $100 bill out from under his mattress, and you know, you'd be like a fourth grader.
mattress. Jeez,
You'd be like a fourth grader with a $100 bill. You know what I
Right.
mean? But then other times,
and then you'd go to school and you'd gamble it.
yeah, he tried. I had a terrible gambling problem because of him. But the whole, it's just, I don't know. It seemed normal for us. And our parents, it never felt like we were struggling.
Is there any part of you? I mean, like you're now a father. You've got children. Is there any part of you that retroactively is sort of like, what the fuck? Like you wouldn't, would you put your children in that risk of like taking that gamble? Is there any part of you that is sort of like,
yes.
yeah,
And I mean, I think I gamble in a different way. Like we chose the worst profession in the world.
All right, that's the point.
And so I will, work on a script or work on a feature and try to get it sold or go out and pitch shows and try to get them sold. And like, and then sell something or book something and get paid a huge amount of money. And then, I'm terrible at managing money because I don't respect it because my parents didn't raise me to respect money.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
I don't worry about saving. I'm like, it'll come, it'll go. Don't get too obsessed about it.
Yeah,
We
don't
won't
let it
worry about
control you. But simultaneously, it would be nice if somebody taught us some semblance of financial responsibility.
I don't have a healthy respect for it, which is terrible. I'll just, I get paid a huge sum of money for a project and I'll be like, drinks are on me,
Right, yeah.
And I'm getting better at it, but like, I'll stretch it to the very end. I'll be like, I need to sell something. I need to get something sold, or I need to, I need to go work for someone, or I need to go do something to figure out how to get money for my family.
It's very hand to mouth lifestyle.
Sometimes, yeah. And then for a few years, I'll work on a show for several years, and but even then, it's like, I just don't. I think the money will come, and we're in a kind of a weird business where the money does come sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
You get paid,
but it's also different when. If you can look back at the past 5 years of your life and know that you've gotten through each one of those and eventually the money has come, then it feels less risky than like something that your dad would do, which sounds like would be
bet like all the money.
Yeah, would be like, oh, I'm going to literally lose the Hallmark store in a card game, which seems to me like, isn't the Hallmark store the way your family is surviving?
It was.
Like that's sort of irresponsible. And now it sounds like I'm dogging on your dad, who sounds like a delightful character, but still, as a father, that seems like a really...
It is terrible now that you put it in that way.
Right, yeah. So what you're saying is your father was awful.
He's a monster. I don't know. I guess.
Have you and him ever talked about like, Dad, what were you doing? Like, has he ever had, or is he just sort of that character where you don't talk about it?
We don't talk about it. It's one of those things where it's like, it's your family, and it's like, that's the way we're not a big, we're a big hugging family and loving family. We're not a big, let's talk it out family.
Really?
Well, I think because there's always so much chaos.
True.
You go and you sit down, when I go visit my family, there's, 30 grandkids running around. There's just you figuring out what meals are going to work or how you're going to get, 40 pounds of burger cooked in the next 15 minutes. There's so much going on that we don't sit and have these heart to hearts. I know my parents love me. They know I love them. And like all that other sort of analysis of what in the hell. Also, their brothers and sisters.
I guess it is sort of like dinner table talk, so to speak. And when there's so many people at the dinner table,
exactly.
You don't have that one-on-one. Like it's funny because I think about like conversations that I've had with my uncle, my aunt, who were like, for me, that was my dinner table talk. It was usually when I was at my aunt's house, and like sitting with my godparents, and like around that specific table is kind of where I remember having these sort of conversations of like, what was this like? Talk about my father, like talk about what happened with my mom and my dad, or this or that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there was, if I had 11 other people sitting next to me, I probably wouldn't have been able to have those conversations.
Well, those conversations happen like maybe, over the summer, sitting on the boat, drinking beers at the end of the night, like 2:00 in the morning.
Sure, right.
And so you don't remember those conversations anyway because you've been drinking all day. So I'm sure we've had plenty of heart to hearts that have been forgotten.
Right.
And my brothers and sisters and I have no problem with communicating, and we'll talk about that stuff, and we'll say it feels like someone else's life sometimes. But I think my parents did have
What do you mean? It feels like somebody else's life? Like when you think back about it?
When I tell people, even like I sit here and tell you the story of, being broke or gambling or washing white walls.
The fluctuation.
Or all that kind of stuff. Or like, the silliness of my parents. It sounds normal to me, but then someone else is like,
no, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And there's 12 kids and I'm like, what? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? There's nothing weird about that at all. So I think that's why I say sometimes it feels like somebody else's life. But their core precepts, they're good Catholics. And so love one another as you want to be loved,
That's kind of their shtick.
Yeah, it was just like, that's our bit. And so be nice,
Right.
and we don't be greedy. Our
Right.
families are very generous. When I get in financial trouble, I can call my brothers and sisters, and even if they don't have it, they'll send it. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
there are families, and nothing bothers me more than people who are selfish. And with my kids, that's how I raise my kids.
Right.
And sometimes I wonder if maybe that's not the right thing, because maybe sometimes we should be more selfish, because that's how you save money.
I mean, the world, I'm a big fan of the Shades of Grey. Like, I feel like that's where I live.
I love it too. The part where he ties her up.
Oh yeah, totally. Exactly. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a fan of sort of living in that middle area a lot. And I feel like it probably is kind of the same with that, where it's like, yeah, you want to teach them this, but also don't forget about this. So it's and that's the problem with kids, is kids don't have that grasp.
Well,
it's harder for kids. Kids is very good and evil, good and bad. Do this, don't do this sort of environment. It's like you told me, I can't remember if this was on air or not, because we've been enjoying a conversation for the most part of the day, but you said something about like, oh, I told my kids that if people curse in a movie, it's art.
Yes.
So yeah, you said that earlier.
I was saying that earlier just because I think that I don't want them to censor themselves or be offended by things, because I want them to be open to it, and I bet partly because I want to be able to watch whatever the hell I want to watch, or listen to whatever I want to listen to in the car, and not have them.
But that's also like, I feel like that's a hard thing for a kid to grasp, is that like there is an okay area.
It's okay
here.
to say fuck if you're in a rap song. Excuse my language. You probably bleep that out. But
no, I curse in this fucking podcast all the time.
If it's a rap song, you can say it, but you can't say it when you're pissed off at your dad.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
But I said earlier,
that's what it's really about. It's really about, don't use this on me.
Exactly. You can tell everyone in the world to fuck off. Just don't say it to me, kid.
No, yeah.
But I said earlier that we put comedy before parenting, and sometimes I'll make that same mistake. But my dad, my sister Kelly, who's 2 up from me, made apple goodies, which is
2 up. Oh, 2 up from you.
Two kids
up,
older
right.
than me. Yeah.
Is that the way that you put it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This one's 1 down. This one's 3 down. This one's 2 up.
Sometimes we refer to each other as our number. I'm number 10. Mark, my brother's number 3.
Wow.
So we'll refer to each other's number, or Kelly. So my sister Kelly learned how to make something called apple goodies in Girl Scouts, and it's basically an apple crumble, right? And so she, one night at dinner, she said, tonight for dessert, Kelly has made her famous apple goodies. And so Kelly goes in with my mom into the kitchen to prepare to present her, and Dad gathers all the other kids together.
Okay.
He goes, okay, you guys, listen. When Kelly comes with her apple goodies, act like it's terrible and start spitting it out.
Oh, jeez.
And so I'm tearing up right now as I tell this story. So I would never do this to my child. And this is kind of my barometer of how I know I'm putting...
where the line is.
Yeah, how I'm putting comedy over parenting. So you see where this is going. So Mom and Kelly march in, and Kelly's got she had her sash on, even of her Girl Scout sash. And she's like, okay, I present to you, and put him in front. And nobody was eating. Like, normally everyone would start eating. Right. But she thought it was interesting that we were all really respecting
quiet,
her,
yeah,
because we all knew the joke was coming, and so she, puts them in front of each one of us,
and nobody eats until
and nobody touches
time.
it, and then maybe some little ice cream on the side, and so Dad's like, okay, God. Kelly, and she's like, well, these are called apple goodies, and if you'd like, you may try it now. And so everyone kind of goes and takes away, oh my God, my mouth is burning. Oh, this is the worst thing. Kelly tears up, just tears start streaming down her face, and my mom looked at my dad like she was gonna murder him. Like, don't play with the ocean, John. She was so mad. She was so mad, and Kelly stormed off sobbing, and all of us kind of looked at each other like, oh,
right, yeah.
Like, we knew. I think you have to remember there's 11 people at that table,
dude. It's a circus.
It's not like 2 people and my dad. No. Like, he orchestrated. We all planned it. Like, we all had characters, and we all had ways.
Like, you put this poor kid in the fucking Truman Show. Like you built a world around her.
So yeah, and see, here's how we know we screwed up, because you cannot say the word apple goodies to this day without Kelly tearing up. And I love Kelly. She's a tough as nails mom. She's got kids, and she's back in Akron, and she's funny, and she's great, and super well balanced. But if you just say the word apple goodies, you'll see a little tear.
It's so mean.
And we did it for a few years. You used it to your advantage. Be like, apple goodies, and she'd start crying. But and even to this day, we laugh about it. But then every time we laugh about it, even right now as I tell you the story, I literally have a tear in the corner of my eye, because it's so terrible. And I use that story I use that story as my barometer of how not to screw up my children.
Right.
So even if I think something is very funny that I would do,
like at the end of the day, ask yourself, will they cry?
And I can't do it.
I hate being pranked.
Do you?
Oh God. And somebody does, like, even Tony,
the center of our universe, apparently.
Yeah,
Aunt May,
the cartoon human being, Tony Wayne, even the way that it's not even a prank, even just the way that he fucks with you, where he'll start something, and he's a great actor, and he can start something so incredibly sincere, and it will be about absolutely nothing. We'll be in the middle of a production shooting something, and he'll walk up and he'll just start asking you a really serious sounding question. And at the end of it, the premise is like, I just want to make sure that my entire biceps are in the shot.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. And it's just like, God damn it, Tony. It's so irritating and stressful to me.
Funny.
Anyways.
But sometimes Tony gets lost in his own improv.
Oh my God.
I've seen Tony get lost in improv where he doesn't know that he's in the middle of an improv.
I don't know if I should share this or not.
Please do.
There's a voicemail that Tony left me. Let's take a little sidebar, and we're just going to do a little Tony talk here. I'm going to share this voicemail that I got from Tony, where he's pitching me an idea for something.
Hey, Jake, Tony. I'm flying out tonight. I'll be gone till Monday. But I want to give you an idea that you can think about for a while. When I come up with good ideas, I like to call you and tell them to you, and then we can figure it out from there. So here's my idea. The song Secret Agent Man, Secret Agent Man. Well, he gives away your number, and that takes away your plan. So like with that in the background, like you have a bad guy, and you've got a plan to like steal something, but if the secret agent man gives away his phone number to a lot of people, then people are just calling him randomly and like harassing him. Like say like the bad guy's got this plan, and he's like hidden around a corner. He's gonna go and take the security guard guy out with like the double hand move to the neck, and he's hidden around the corner. But then suddenly his phone goes off, because someone's just randomly calling him because his number's been given away, and it's like ring ring, and then the security guard hears it, is alerted to the phone ringing, and then he checks around the corner, and be like, "What is that noise?" And he finds the bad guy,
what is secret
and like
agent
takes out his baton and
inside?
whaps him over the head, and the bad guy goes down. So it's like, well, he gives away your number, and it takes away your plan. Secret agent man. You know what I'm saying? So, anyways. All right, I'll leave you with that. Think about it. So we'll work on it when I get back into town, like, Monday night or Tuesday.
Funny.
So that is, and that's 100% sincere.
Well, here's the thing though. I got a message from him. I don't know if it's connected to your voicemail, but I have a text message from him.
Okay.
It's 100% God's truth. Yesterday at 1:54 p.m.
Okay.
Buddy, sent you a Gmail chat. Better check it out if you want to make $1 million. That's what it was. That's all it says.
It's probably that.
It's like, well, no. Then my G chat was something about a foosball movie. He has an idea for whatever it was. So, and Secret Agent Man.
Secret Agent Man.
The fact that he sang you that song twice in that voicemail.
That's a 2-minute long voicemail. Oh, so that's Tony Wayne. I'm sorry. So that was a tangent because we can't sit down and not talk about Tony Wayne.
Yeah, we got to figure out the Tony Wayne podcast.
He's a Muppet. He's an absolute Muppet.
He is a character. We were once sitting in New York City, just obliterated. We used to go to this bar called the Village Idiot. And we'd stay late and drink PBRs, and we would just get so shit-faced. And we'd always end up talking about Hamlet. And so one night we were just drunk, and the bar threw us out, and we ended up sitting by these trash cans by this apartment. And having this, he always wanted to play Hamlet, but he thought he was getting too old for it. And we'd always talk about Hamlet's conflict, about action and inaction. There's always some metaphor for Tony's life involved.
That's Tony's favorite thing in the world is Hamlet. Really.
Oh yeah. So we were sitting there, and just it must have been 4:00 in the morning. All of a sudden, we hear from this window, "Hey, you two assholes talking about Hamlet! Shut the fuck up!"
Was it one of my family members?
Yeah,
it sounds like one of my family.
It was like on 14th Street and 9th Avenue, and we're like, wow, she must have been listening for a while. She knew we were talking about Hamlet specifically. But yeah, that's the kind of drunken rant you get into with Tony.
Yeah, I love Tony Wayne so much. He's one of my favorite people on the planet.
He's a character. We were just talking about him today. I think the world needs more Tony. And
yeah, it absolutely does. It will get it. It will get it if it's the last thing that I do.
It could be the last thing you do if you work with him.
So getting back to you for a moment, I have this question for you. You're a writer? Okay, that's not a question. That was a statement.
Okay.
You're a writer.
Mm-hmm.
You're a producer.
Mm-hmm.
You're an extremely funny gentleman.
Oh.
You're a very talented gentleman. How have you not written the sitcom based on your 12 siblings with a father who gambles stuff away in and out? Because that is a television show that I can't understand the reason why it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Now, I used to do a lot of stand-up about my family, and and there are bubblings of it. The thing about it is you have to be farther away from something before you could really put it in perspective as a writer.
Okay.
And I think that I'm still too close to it.
Really?
You know, I think I have some,
I think of shows that were like, that are kind of stem from the same thing. Like a Fresh Off the Boat is like that kid, the memoir, or he's not a kid anymore, but obviously like he wrote the memoir as a child. And obviously that's been taken out of context for the sake of the TV show, but stuff like that, where it's these TV shows that were, oh yeah, this is based on this true story.
There's a few bubblings. I mean, there's a certain amount of respect I have for my family, my brothers and sisters who, you know, even the stories I tell today, I'm like, I wonder if they're going to feel bad about that. But like, but there's a certain amount of like, maybe, you know, and there's a feature film that I am working on. There's two of them. One of them is my mom used to declare Bachman holidays where she said we didn't have to go to school.
That's great.
And we could just hang out. Later on, I realized it's because we need to leave town because someone who Dad owed money to was coming for
it
house.
all comes back to that.
But
Mike, it all comes back to that.
And I wonder, I think sometimes it feels like it's too close, and I'll probably get to a point where, you know, I think I have a lot more garbage to write before I can write the really good stuff. I have to cut my teeth a little more on.
Maybe I can consult with you.
Yeah,
maybe we could do it. Maybe I can be your distance.
I'd appreciate that.
Because I'm telling you, it's an absolutely incredible story, Michael, and I wanted to speak with you significantly more about it because I feel like the amount of very specific details that only, and I mean it, like that only you can have. Like, I could think about in my head, like, oh yeah, there's been movies. Wasn't there a freaking Steve Martin movie about having a bunch of kids? You know what I mean? Like, I could think of, or like Yours, Mine's, and Theirs, whatever the hell that one was. Like
Cheaper by the Dozen.
There you go. Like, I know the archetype. I'm sure I could fart something out. But you're going to have such a very specific detail.
Well, we'll be able to elaborate.
Oh, look at
Boom,
you.
plug.
Keeping it on brand, ladies and gentlemen. Keeping it on brand here on Dragon Wagon Radio. Listen to us on dragonwagonradio.com. All right. Anyways.
You paused like, did I buy .com or
yeah,
.net?
I legitimately had to forget what it was. Yeah, I'm a professional. All right.
.org.
This has been fantastic. Thank you for talking. We're going to do more of this.
My pleasure.
How do people find you on the internet?
You can catch me at www.atthemike.com, and you can catch me on Twitter at the Bachman, 2 N's, and I'm on the Facebook and the Instagram, I think, as well. So if you type in www.atthemike.com, you'll find me. If you just type in atthemike.com, for some reason it doesn't direct properly, and I probably should have that fixed.
Yeah, I can fix that for you.
But thank you. So go to atthemike.com or go to @thebachman, TheBachmann.
Do it to it. As always, find me on Twitter at LiquidJake, and please follow at It's Dragon Wagon on all social media. Thank you so much again for those of you who have left ratings and reviews on iTunes. It's incredibly important. Now we have a star rating. We are a 5-star podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who have done that. Please continue to do that. I absolutely love to see those reviews, and I want to hear your thoughts. Let us know how we're doing. After all, this show is just as much yours as it is mine or Mike's or any of my previous guests. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll do it again.
You didn't plug Pinch on July 15th.
Yeah, once again, I did a lot last episode with Tony, so I was going to try to keep on the reps. But now you're pressuring me, so I'm going to do it.
Hey, what are you doing July 15th, Jakes?
July 15th, thanks for asking, Mike. I appreciate that. July 15th, I'm going to be on Long Island, where I am from, at the Long Island International Film Expo. My feature film Pinch, which is a low budget, no budget, DIY, real kind of fly by the bootstraps indie feature film that I made along with my co-star Tony Wayne, last week's guest. If you're on Long Island, please come and check it out. It'll be at 7 p.m. at the Belmore Movies, which is a small little kind of podunk theater, but that's got a ton of charm. Super fun. The people at the Long Island International Film Expo are fantastic. You should definitely follow them if you're in that area and go see as many movies as you can. It's a really great time. Thank you so much for making me plug that. And until next time, everybody, please be nice to each other. Love you, Mike.
All right, love you too, buddy.
You guys, you don't get it. I'm sitting here. He's just so handsome. He's got this face and this beard, and his name is Matt Kessler. Matt, you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. It is called Too Many Records. It is an extension of a YouTube show that existed already called too many records. And it's because I have a lot of freaking records.
What's a lot of records?
I have about 1,500 vinyl LPs, and it's growing by the day.
That's a lot of records.
Yeah, so on the show, I talk about records, I nerd out about music with people, and it's a real good time, so I hope you'll listen if you like tunes.
How do we listen?
You go to iTunes or Stitcher, and you can download it there, or go to toomanyrecords.net.
I have an old Hall & Oates record I'd like to sell you.
Nope.
It's Dragon Wagon.